Hey guys, welcome back to MinnieMindyReacts, and on this channel I react to whatever's new here on YouTube, whatever I want to react to, and that's why it's called MinnieMindyReacts. So, I am finally back to do the update about Tiff, and if you don't know who Tiff is, she is Tiffany from the Ultimatum Queer Love show. And she finally came out with her side of the story. And initially when I was making my reaction to all her videos, I ended up getting sick, and like now I'm back and I wanted to react to it now that I have the time, because this video is like almost 30 minutes long, and react to it. I did post out other content after, which kind of like threw off how I wanted it to flow on my channel, but like it is what it is. I'm just trying to get back into being consistent, and as you can hear, I am still very much sick. So we're gonna get into this video and really break down what she went through and her side of the story. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please subscribe. Please make sure you comment on my videos and like them, just so I can get some interaction here on this channel. And we're gonna jump right into this. So it says, my side of the story post reunion of Ultimatum Queer Love. So let's get into this.
Everyone, this is Tiff from Ultimatum Queer Love, and this is my side of the story. So as you know, I really didn't get that much of a chance to talk at the reunion, and I wanted this time to clear the air and talk about my experience with my ex-post show in the same.
I wanted to just throw this in there. I don't know if like this is a part of like if she's like recording on her phone, or like if she's actually using a camera, but can you like lighten it up a little bit? Cause and I'm sure that like this is a heavy topic, so like that's just the minors of it, but like just having some lights on would be good. But you know, I don't want to complain too much.
That everyone else did that I just never got a chance to do. And to be noted, I'll be reading off a lot of my notes, as I want to make sure that I have words clear in the way that I wish to present them. And also a warning, I will be touching on topics of abuse and domestic violence in the video, so please watch at your own discretion. I wasn't even planning to make a video like this, but with thousands of people who have been reaching out to me at this point, sharing with me their most vulnerable stories of surviving domestic violence and narcissistic abuse, I feel like I would do a disservice to my soul by not speaking my truth to the tens of thousands of people out there that have witnessed what happened at the reunion, reflecting back on their confusing and hurtful relationships, thinking to themselves, me too. On top of that, as desperate measure to weaponize their own son in retaliation of how the public sees her, should say enough. And what I mean by this is I was informed that my ex posted a video saying that although she takes accountability for what has happened, that she was in an emotional, abusive relationship, which again, people who are educated on the subject matter can read right through the lines. What I mean by this is the smear campaign continuing after the reunion, like she already didn't have enough to say to begin with. She said that I have threatened to call CPS on her regarding her child and being an unstable mother, which I will get into it in this video. Trying an absolute huge accusation as a desperate attempt to, again, weaponize their own son and pull the mother card to try to redeem their abuse. It's not acceptable, and on behalf of my peace, my lack of being able to speak my voice, and behalf of thousands of survivors, I will now speak out. And by no means I'm perfect. Obviously, all of us aren't, as we have a lot of work to do within ourselves. But I never saw myself as an instigator, an aggressor, or someone who finds satisfaction in hurting people.
And she didn't come across that way in her videos either. Even on the show, she didn't come across that way, and her ex just seemed very like trauma filled, and with the, I don't want to say like she's a victim, but I feel like she feels like she needs to protect herself. And while that doesn't make it okay to treat someone how you treat them, trauma can affect you that way.
Sometimes you're in a toxic relationship and you don't realize how really toxic it is until you're out of it. And let's be clear, both parties of a relationship can be toxic, but research has shown over and over again that in a majority of cases, there always only tends to be one abuser in the relationship that dominates power and control. And in my experience with Mildred, she was the only one and was the only person, as you cannot just see in an edited reality TV show, but also her true colors came out on the reunion. Because it's not about the details, it's about how you treat someone. I was drawn to my ex's energy because right off the bat, I noticed she came from a troubled background. And we do come from two different worlds. And although I'll never be able to understand what it's like to be in her shoes, I can guarantee you I have met people who have gone through similar experiences, but can go through their walks of life without purposely inflicting harm onto people again and again.
Yeah, but like, everybody's different, right? And we can't, like, granted, everyone should be held accountable for how they treat people and how they deal with their traumas, but some people just don't know how to deal with their traumas. And sometimes when you get in a relationship, there are a lot of triggers that you haven't dealt with, so it constantly feels like an attack. And once again, I'm not making any excuses for Mildred, because the whole season of the Ultimatum, I was just like, what the fuck? But what I can say is that from someone that is in a relationship that is dealing with unhealed traumas within herself and she's not trying to fix it, it's gonna seem like abuse, because she's so busy trying to feeling like she needs to protect herself because she's unhealed, that it comes off as an attack, if that makes sense.
I experienced Mildred as someone manipulative since the very beginning. I guess I was a little naive because I was so in the vortex that I didn't even know it was happening in real time. And as a lot of people who have survived these kind of relationships, you can see again and again the same patterns and the same behaviors. Most of the relationship, I actually felt bad for her. I was constantly being chewed out like a fraction of what you saw on the stage, called hundreds and hundreds of names, but will always softly guilt-tripped and shamed into believing her bad behavior was my fault. It's the victim complex. And because I didn't love her enough, or because she was always afraid of me leaving her, I felt so horrible for everything she was going through that I started to lose my own boundaries in that relationship. For example, rather than saying to myself, I'm constantly being called names, I don't deserve this, the manipulation of a vulnerable narcissistic trait will leave one thinking, she must have gone through so much in her life, she feels the need to call me names. Let me try to be patient, prove myself, and show up even better, so she won't need to call me names. That's where it starts, with boundaries. This woman has grown up in chaos, lives in chaos, and her relationship mirrors chaos. And I believe the manipulation was shamed for my behaviors on a daily basis because of how hard I tried to fix the relationship over and over again. I believe for years I was a bad person. And that's horrible, to be in a relationship with someone where you believe you're a bad person the entire time. And people who haven't experienced that before say, why don't you just leave? And this is where the manipulation comes into play. And so many people can nod their heads with me and say, you know what? I have been there too. And it's something a lot of people cannot understand until they're actually walking in those shoes. And at the time, she broke up with me at least 50 times. You see me talk about it on the show. Not the other way around, you know? Like, it wasn't me that was constantly breaking with her. It was her that was breaking up with me all the time. And after researching this, regardless of what any person does or whatever the reasons are, breaking up with someone 50 times and taking them back and discarding them and bringing them back and discarding them is abuse in itself. Here I come back around.
It's an emotional abuse.
thinking everything is my fault. And I try even harder just to get discarded again. No matter what I did, it was never enough. I was never enough. And I do believe that relationships tend to mirror what we go through as children, as all of us do. So Sam gave me insight into realizing this during our trial marriage, that I am enough no matter what I do. But unfortunately, I was still in a toxic vortex and couldn't see myself out of this vicious cycle. Continuing to be in these relationships where you keep on getting discarded, gaslit, disposed, harmed by words, guilt-tripped and controlled, it forms complex PTSD and does damage to the brain. It's a real thing. It's abusive. And I was constantly in a state of defending myself, always in fight, flight, freeze, or fall mode. No matter what I did not have a safe space. As if I left, I was shamed. We saw how that played out in the Ultimatum when Aussie left Sam. And she turned the negative around and blamed Aussie and victimized Aussie. And although Aussie has childhood trauma to work on, as we all do, Aussie was also expressing boundaries. Something I did not have during the show. In fact, I developed such a thick skin because I had to. Because I had to go through the blunt and force of Mildred all of the time to a point where I started to become numb. And you wonder why I acted the way I did towards Sam right away, but there she went, introducing me a gentle energy. I didn't have to have a guard up, because in the relationship with Mildred, I constantly had a guard up all the time because I never knew what to expect living within her chaotic life. One of the biggest things I've learned post-relationship in my healing journey is that one person can tell who is the abuser is by seeing that the abuser is constantly provoking fights and is showing dominancy and power in the relationship. And constantly defending myself and my own sense of peace, and as a last resort, lashing out and screaming after being chewed out for the 12th time that week over nothing worth yelling about, is reactive abuse. And it's interesting because towards the end of the relationship, when I educated myself on narcissism and started waking up, I actually introduced the term reactive abuse to Mildred in order to prove to her, again, unfortunately, even though it wasn't the best thing to do, the best thing to do is go non-contact and walk away. But at the time I introduced her that term, I remember her laughing at me and telling me that I'm not Johnny Depp, so good luck. And of course, this is my experience of her. And so you can speculate all you want, and I understand that is worth speculation, but that is my experience. And I'm pretty sure that you've seen, like, up until through watching the Ultimatum and the reunion, that I've been nothing but straightforward, and I've also taken accountability with some things where needed. She has done none, and has also been caught in numerous lies, as we can witness, and has constantly been a victim. So when we go on her social media and she says that she apologizes or she takes accountability for domestic violence, but then she says that she reacted out of reactive abuse, does she even know what reactive abuse means? Because, quite frankly, she's doing a disgrace to the entire community of survivors, NDV, and narcissism by reversing the entire narrative to make it look like she's the victim. This is a typical pattern. And as always, just like she was the victim of the reunion, just like she's the victim of arrest, just like she's a victim of her ex-wife leaving her, just like she was the victim of Aussie leaving her, just like she's the victim of pulling the Latina card. It took me years to finally understand the deep and vast victim complex that was going on, and quite frankly, it was not my battle to fight, and that is why I got up and left the reunion, because I shouldn't have to worry about anything she says anymore, because she is not my problem. So moving on, before the reunion, I was transparent with production and reached out to them to let them know of the DV case. I gave them a copy of the police report, and they had this in their hands as the reunion was going on. They were well aware that Mildred did get arrested for domestic violence and that she did admit to. So they had the copy of the police report in their hands at the reunion as it was going down Lifetime. However, I told production that I did not want to bring up the arrest to them because I was so scared of it sparking more turmoil and disaster when it came to her and her son. I told production that I didn't know how quite to get out my truth as to the real reason why I left that relationship. And no, it wasn't because of the arrest, like you probably see in the tabloids and the magazines and online articles right now. Yes, like many survivors, I stayed. I regret that, but I did stay. And I'll tell you in a second why. But meanwhile, talking to producers, I was so lost on how to navigate telling my story and my truth to the world without throwing anyone underneath the bus. So with those reasons, I came into the reunion with peace and told myself I am not going to bring it up. A typical tactic that these kind of people do is they smear campaign you and throw out every single possible bomb they can to make you look like an absolute horrible person before you tell your truth, so the world can be distracted from a miserable reality of who they really are. And you can see that when I was talking about Shiloh and her surgery, and out of nowhere, she asked what the dates were and then went in very, very hard before I could even get a word out about my dog at that point, for God's sake. Now let's go back to the day of where she got arrested. And here's what I mean by victim mentality. And again, recognize the patterns, because I know my fellow survivors are watching this right now and they're nodding their heads because it hits home. You cannot fake a personality. You can push it like a rubber band, just like how some people can push their personality to act a certain way around their in-laws during Thanksgiving, but then as soon as they come home and back to their baseline personality, they're like, whew, that was a lot. So eventually these people will show them for who they are, and that's what it is. So going back to the day she got arrested, here's what I mean by victim mentality. Yes, she threw a heavy tailgate at me at the top of the huge staircase, and yes, she admitted to hitting me and following me. It got to a point where my own safety was an absolute immediate question, because we know it never starts with the big things. And as soon as I called the police, from my experience, she immediately stopped throwing things at me in that moment. She sat down, started screaming and crying, and she told me this: "Look at what you did. They're going to take my son away from me." Again, I was shamed for protecting myself. I immediately felt horrible for protecting myself and calling for help over my own safety. This is how much she has spent years manipulating me, to the point where it became so second nature because I did not establish strong boundaries in the beginning of the relationship. My ex does not have full citizenship here in America, and for what I'm being told her again, maybe not the most reliable source, but I remember her telling me that if she gets deported for domestic violence, that her son won't be able to come to Mexico with her because of health reasons. So don't quote me on that, but I remember it had something to do with better health care here in America for a disability in Mexico. So again, I was blamed for the instance. She got arrested anyway. And what you'll see in the police report, and what you have also seen Mildred say publicly now, is that I have been calling her a trash mom. And to be honest, I will stand for that. And I absolutely did say that. No, I didn't have the best connection with her son. I did try. And there are many things I will not mention of his behaviors inherited from his mom that it was hard to connect with for the privacy of that child. But he is a loving kid. Mildred loved him as a child and loved him a lot and was such a kind and patient soul towards him. However, I stand by trash mom because now, after telling the world I threatened to call CPS on you, I will now stand up for myself as your desperate attempt to use the mother card as a way to gain sympathy for others. During the arrest, I called my ex a trash mom because she would constantly emotionally abuse me and scream at me in front of her own son. It would terrify him. I would constantly deflect the argument over and over again and say hundreds of times, "Not in front of your son. Not in front of your son." It became a daily thing. And helping to raise
I think too, again, not to downplay what she's saying, or not to make an excuse for Mildred or whatever. I think too, when you're in a heated situation, or like you're really upset, when you mention somebody's child, it immediately sends you off the fucking handle. Because I could be arguing with anybody about anything, and the moment they mention my son, it's like all fucking bets are off. So like I can see how it would like immediately like fly her off the edge, because sometimes how we feel is so much more intense, and then when you incorporate our child, whether that's saying not in front of your son, or not while your son's around or whatever, you're disregarding how I currently feel because this child is right here. And while yes, it's not okay for me to act like this in front of him, this is how I feel. And sometimes it's hard for people to separate the two. So I mean, no, it's not right how she's reacted, how she's treated her, but in an instant, anytime you mention somebody's child, whether that's in a way to be protective or whatever, when I feel like you are the person that's disregarding how I feel, or I feel that I need to protect myself against, you're immediately the enemy. It doesn't matter if that's because you don't want this to happen in front of my kid, you're the enemy. So, I mean, you can't say, oh, not in front of your son, not in front of your son, because it's gonna fly that person. Don't mention my child. Especially if you haven't had the best relationship with him. Like, I could see if it's one thing, if, you know, they had this perfect relationship, he looked at her as a mom, but like when you already have a struggled relationship with my child, you mentioning my child, and I feel that I need to protect myself and my kid from you, that's automatically a reason to attack.
Child with special needs is no easy task, and I will never know what that is fully like. I won't. And I did call her a trash mom because of letting the abuse get in the way of emotional stability of her own child, which I am simply was looking out for her own child. So again, before production, I told them the real reason of why I left and that I didn't want to bring it up at the reunion of any of it. But now I'm being accused again. I did not leave that relationship during the rest of May 2022. I left the relationship after more instances of physical abuse, and the last one being of September of 2022. The only difference between this occasion and the rest of the instances is that this time, she became physically violent with me in front of her son. That was my last straw to leaving the relationship. Production is aware of this. Production has receipts of this actually happening with evidence attached. And as much anger that I had with this woman before getting on the stage of a reunion, I decided to keep quiet in protection of her and her son. I believe in my heart she knows that I was not going to bring up her son at the reunion, and she made sure of that, but just in case, by berating me on stage to the point where I couldn't even say anything. And she decided to use her own motherhood as a weapon in an attempt to demolish me and my reputation as a way to cover up her entire story. She flipped and changed the narrative as always, and to me, it's disgusting. She doesn't know how to look within herself. So yes.
She's not healed. She's not healed from her traumas, and she always feels like she needs to protect herself.
I did mention calling CPS on her, not because I'm crazy, but because I was concerned about the safety and well-being of her child. It's interesting how someone can have somewhat of a hard time connecting with a child, but at the same time, to be more of a parent by not letting abusive behaviors be prevalent in front of the eyes of a child. I might not know what it's like to be a parent and the hardships of raising one as a single parent, especially with special needs, but I know common decency when it comes to protecting a child. And at the reunion, it showed. I was more concerned with her protecting her child in possible deportation status, while she was over here using her child as another weapon to degrade me and harm me, just so she can cover up what she's done. Not to say that she isn't a loving mother, because she is. But her hatred and inner demons will always outweigh any love she has for anyone. And this is why everyone leaves her, including Aussie. I'm tired of letting her use the mother card and Latina card on me so much by trying to demolish my own compassionate character, something she will never be. I'm not just standing up for my own peace, but mainly I'm standing up to leverage my platform and know how thousands of narc and DV survivors that have gone through similar experiences and what they've seen in similar patterns and have endured some of the most dreadful pain that wounds can't compare to. Those scars are invisible, and I hate the fact that I'm forever attached to you when it comes to a TV show. I hate the fact that I will always be associated to you. For months, I've been concerned and kept quiet because I didn't want to throw anyone under the bus, and I was concerned about there being extra drama than needed. But I realize that this is so much bigger than drama. This isn't drama. This is real life, real relationships, and real people got to witness it. And Mildred, you did a disgrace to act the way you did on stage at the reunion. And millions of people out there deserve an apology or at least need to feel heard. And because it's not coming from you, then as the last resort, it will come from me. So Mildred, while you ventured out, after 4 months of me leaving you, with total silence and a time for you to reflect on everything that you did in our relationship and reflect on what you knew happened that day as to the reason of why I left, I decided to leave that relationship out of safety of your son so we could be apart, so this doesn't continue in front of your son. You came on the world's largest international streaming platform to cover up the abuser that you are. And what you did was not just an attempt to smear campaign me, but at this point, realize that you have now triggered and brought back flashbacks to millions of people around the globe that have gone through an abusive, narcissistic, and violent relationship to the point, based on all my DMs, that you have triggered them so badly to where they cannot sleep at night anymore because you've reminded them of the abuser that was in their life or that is still currently in their life. You've brought back the trauma.
Hold on, y'all. I got like 8 minutes left, but my baby is whining. Hold on.
Pain for millions of people, not as an actor in a movie, but as a real life person, simply in an attempt to cover up your abuse. The world just saw you for who you are, and you should be ashamed of yourself. At the end of the day, the numbers of things I have witnessed and seen Mildred do would completely demolish any credibility of who she says she is and those characteristics she is trying to paint herself as a person and as a suitable mother.
And that's the thing that kind of pisses me off about these breakups and when they get messy and on the internet is that when you're in a relationship with someone for 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, 2 months, and that person is a mother, there's going to be a lot of things that parenting wise you don't agree with their parenting or they don't agree with your parenting, right? And that could be due to how they're choosing to raise their children outside of what they've been through traumatically, or raising their children how they grew up, right? And that varies from culture to culture. So whether that's Hispanic culture, whether that's African American culture, whether that's Caucasian culture, we all have different parenting styles, and when you are in a relationship with someone that has a child and someone that doesn't have a child, and you're trying to build this life with this person and their child has to attach or have a special connection or whatever, your views on how parenting should be isn't going to always align. So when you come on the internet and you say, yeah, I've seen her do X, Y, and Z and A, B, C, D, E, F, G, there's no proof unless you have some type of receipt or video or footage or something that can prove your stance. Not that it doesn't matter, but it shouldn't be brought up because, yeah, she's probably going out her way to make you look like a bad person, but you're equally sabotaging her and putting her more at risk to get her son taken away. So it's I don't know, it's just very messy when you got two hurt people and you got one person that hasn't done the self-work to heal herself, and she's just bringing trauma to someone that doesn't need it, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's just it's a rough situation, and I always hate those situations where it's like, oh, I've seen her do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and okay, but like that doesn't matter. You're gonna see your person do a whole bunch of things that you may not agree with. You're gonna have a whole bunch of, communication misunderstandings, action misunderstandings, and I don't know.
And as far as the reunion goes, you will not see her lies pile up and up. Her accusing me of woman back at our house of ours is not, as she claims, by ours, meaning that she thinks it's her house. She says on the reunion that it's her house, but it was our house. Let's get that straight. But she's wearing eyeliner at the reunion when she says that it was on the floor. And she wore eyeliner in our relationship. And on top of that, I also wear eyeliner. So as far as the sex board games go, I broke up with her in September of 2022. And I'm guessing she's talking about this right here, where I ordered off of Amazon in October after I broke up with her and I was going on dating apps and dating other people. Here you can see I purchased that around the time of the breakup. So I'm guessing you're trying to smear campaign and twist the narrative even more of some sex board games when all it really was just a deck of cards and getting to know someone you're dating. And if that's so, and this is indeed what you're referring to, which pretty much adds up, then it means that you just admitted on national television of opening my mail without my consent. That is a felony. Let that sink in. She also admitted to throwing a dog gate on me, and in the police report, you'll see her making a statement of mentioning nothing about a dog gate. Instead, her first testimony upon arrest says that she hit me multiple times, and then in the second testimony she got cuffed, she said that she did not hit me, that I'm too strong for her to hit. And that doesn't make any sense. I don't know about you, but I can push an elephant. It may not budge, but I can still push it. And so at the reunion, now she's actually admitting throwing a dog gate on me, which I downgraded to the police as a last resort and tossed. And I said she tossed it because I was so afraid and ashamed of her own actions, getting possibly deported and losing custody of her son and jeopardizing my own safety so she can guarantee living here with her son.
So, like, how are we defining throw and toss, right? Because toss is lightly tossing something to somebody, like how you would toss a football to a 2-year-old, right? That would be considered tossing. And then throwing something at someone would be something with intention, full force. Is that how we're defining toss and throw? Because either way, to toss or throw something at someone, it's still an intentional act to hurt someone. And I would assume that if you're throwing a dog gate at someone, it's to hurt that person.
And that is horrible. And that also tends to be pretty common around victims. They will downgrade an arrest report because the abuser has power and control over them, not just physically, but emotionally. It's contradicting, and as always, things are twisted to the point where she can't keep up in a desperate attempt to fit her narrative. And as far as the rent situation goes, when you're being gaslit for so long to back in the reunion, I essentially became so confused, and I was thinking of 8 or 9 other accusations she laid on me, and shifting it right to another accusation, which again is abusive. And I get to a point where I become so confused and flustered that I barely even know what I'm talking about at this point.
And that's what I was saying about communication. It's better to have that open communication when one thing happens versus having to go back and say, you did this, because how do I fix 50 million things at one time? There's no way possible that if you're coming to me with 50 things that I've done, that I would be able to fix all 50 things in that instant to make you happy versus you coming to me when you're at 60%. You're coming to somebody when you're at 90%, 100%, and it would have been less intense if you would have came at 50 or 60%. So that's why I always tell people that I get in relationships with. If you have an issue, just address that issue as soon as it happens. That way, I'm not having to deal with the last 5 things that you done held to battle at the same time. You can't battle a whole bunch of problems at one time and expect it to be fixed like that overnight, because we are all a work in progress. A lot of us have a lot of trauma from prior relationships, especially in the LGBT community, because we are all women and we're all emotionally high strung. So it's harder to fix things when it's in bulk versus just fixing it when it happens. And I can see how, coming to somebody like, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And you're having to defend yourself from the last 3 things, and you could get very lost in like what you're trying to say or how you're trying to present things, because it's so many things that you're having to correct at one time.
The actual scene between Mildred and I lasted around 15 minutes. Not the 5 minutes that you saw. It kept going and going and going, and it would not stop. Being gaslit on national television, like over your morals, is something I can't even comprehend to this day. And when it came to the rent situation, I actually thought that she was talking about utilities at that point, because when you are thinking of accusation 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't even know what the fuck is reality anymore, pardon my language, you don't even know what she's saying half the time anymore. And you are trying desperately, like you have been desperately trying to prove yourself for 3 years, that you're not this bad person. Because she's taken a semi-truth and twisting it to fit the narrative of her all of a sudden jumping to conclusions. Oh, you can't connect with your son? I'm not respected as a mother. Oh, you financially, we can't share bank accounts, you're financially dependent on me. I mean, it's just over and over again. Actually, my ex and I paid rent 50-50 and have always paid 50-50. And I'm more than happy to provide receipts, but at this point in time, I don't think it's needed because, again, details don't matter. Me and thousands of other survivors see right through the bullshit. And I asked her what she thought of the ideas of splitting utilities 2/3 because I pay the internet bill by myself, which is $60 a month. But in an attempt to smear cane someone, they will try to confuse you and baffle you and word salad you as much as possible to get a reaction out of you, to make you look stupid, unstable, and not even able to comprehend what you're saying so they can win an argument. Don't believe me? Do some research and you'll see a pattern from beginning to end. Financial control was another tactic of why I left the relationship. I had a job, I had money, I paid all my bills on time. But no, I do not want a shared bank account. Why? Because if I was so financially stable, like she claims, then why would I want to share a bank account with her? So me, the jobless person, can have access to her money? The math is not mathing. It's not adding up. Could it possibly believe that she could have more financial control over me? I would speculate that. And I didn't let it happen. So anyway, I hope this answers a lot of your questions. This is pretty long and it was a little bit longer than I intended. But I wanted to get my point across as follows. There can be toxic relationships, but there only tends to be one abuser. And the abuser always tends to be the aggressor, the instigator, and the one who dominates for control and power. I'm pretty sure I was defending myself the entire relationship, as you see on TV also. I did not leave the relationship because of the arrest. I left the relationship after being physically abused again and again, but this time in front of her son. Because I know she can't change horrible behaviors for her son, she will never change for me. And it's a lesson, it's a big lesson learned. And I stayed quiet about it as long as I could, even by telling production and them having all the receipts for it, until she slanders me with me using her son as a weapon and continue to attack me online. I am healing. I am happy. I have learned what it's like to show myself compassion after healing from dark moments of shame post-breakup. It is so hard healing invisible scars of why you let something happen for that long and you did not know the reason why of why you stayed. You stayed because you were trying to prove that you were a good person. But the fact is, I've learned that you are enough. If you were kind, gentle, regardless of how you react out of the abuse, regardless of whatever it is that they flip back around you to make you look like you're the one when they're simply the one projecting all of their insecurity and hates onto you, just know that you are enough. I never want anyone to feel the way that I did when I was with her. So much that it's become a passion of mine to educate myself on these personality traits and healing from it, because I've already know that before the show airs that I would be helping some people from it. But it's way more vast than I thought. And from all the love and support I'm being shown, I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like, you will heal. It's not a linear process. It will take time. Educate yourselves more. Set boundaries. And how you set boundaries is by showing yourself compassion and forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself that you didn't know any better. Give yourself compassion. Go no contact. And be the beacon of light that you are. And yes, you're enough. And you always will be. There's many resources below if anyone's interested to wanting to learn more. But other than that, thank you for your time.
Oh no, man, it's just it's very heavy, and I hate that they had to go through that together. I hope that Mildred is getting the help that she needs. I hope that she's doing a lot of the self-work that she needs to do, because Latina to Latina, I understand that sometimes there's a lot of traumas that come with, you know, how we grew up, and a lot of the, you know, disciplinary acts that take place in order to like mold us into the people we are just based as our culture. But you got to do the self-work, baby. You have to do the self-work. You have to break those generational curses of how we're supposed to be and be the people that we want to be. Whether that's for ourselves or in relationships, you have to do the self-work. So I hope that they get the help that they both need. I hope that they both get the healing that they both need. And it's gonna be a healing journey, but you know, healing is continuous and it never stops. So that's what I think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna try to piece together, because I had to stop it at 20 minutes, so I'm gonna just piece them together and hope that they collide well. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. That way I can get some interaction on this channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. I love you guys. Bye.